Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily. It's week 2 of trial for Adam Montgomery in New Hampshire. He's the father of a missing 5-year-old girl who's presumed dead. This week, the girl's stepmother testified against her estranged husband as part of a plea deal. This is the first of 2 trials for Montgomery. In this case, he's charged with 2 counts each of being an armed career criminal, receiving stolen property, and theft by unauthorized taking. Prosecutors accuse him of stealing 2 guns from a couple's home and trying to sell them in the fall of 2019. The crime allegedly happened just months before the disappearance of his daughter, Harmony. She was last seen alive in late 2019. That's when investigators believe she was likely murdered. But Harmony wouldn't be reported missing until 2 years later. Her stepmother, Kayla Montgomery, pleaded guilty to perjury charges last fall. She's accused of lying to a grand jury about Harmony's last known whereabouts. As part of Kayla's plea deal, she was required to testify against Adam in his firearms trial. Prosecutors also agreed to drop her own stolen property charges connected to the case. Here's how her testimony went down when she took the stand on Monday.
The incident that you're describing, were you already aware at that point that the guns had been stolen from the Frayne house?
Yes.
And you said people had come to sell drugs?
Yeah.
Was that to you or to someone else?
To Adam, but I was going to be doing the drugs too.
Okay, so they came to sell drugs to Adam, you were going to do the drugs as well?
Yes.
And it sounded like you said he offered to sell them the firearms?
Yeah, to trade them or buy them. Buy the firearms or trade them for drugs.
Okay, so he had them at that point and he was going to trade them or sell them for drugs?
Yes, trade them for drugs or sell them for money.
At that point, did you know what he was wanting to get for them?
No, I had no idea because I don't know. I never dealt with that before. I just let him deal with it because I don't know.
Adam is scheduled to go to trial again later this year, this time for Harmony's alleged murder. Investigators believe the 5-year-old died in December of 2019 after Adam punched her in the head repeatedly. Authorities say Adam then destroyed or concealed Harmony's body within 3 months of her death. During the investigation, prosecutors believe that Adam attempted to, quote, induce or otherwise cause his estranged wife, Kayla, to lie about the case, leading her to these perjury charges. Harmony's body has never been recovered. Adam was indicted in January for charges including second-degree murder, which carries a life sentence on its own. Adam is pleading not guilty to all charges. The murder trial is set to begin in August and is slated to last about a month. Terry, do you think Kayla's testimony helped the prosecution at all?
I do. You know, when she first came in and she was testifying, you know, she had the prison uniform on and she was very slow and it was very drawn out, and I think that they may have lost the jury a little bit during some of that testimony. But from a substance standpoint, she really did make the points that she needed to make. She knew where he stole these arms from. She knew because he told her that he stole those guns. So I think that the jury really, from a substance standpoint, they understand that he did take these guns, and so that's the charge here. Obviously, the real big charge is going to be that second case, Brian, that you mentioned, the murder charge. But it does seem as though she was very influenced by him, and that's why she lied. Now, she has this deal with the prosecution. She did her part. She got on the stand. She testified, and she was factually accurate, it seems to me.
Yeah. Mark, would the result of this case, guilt or not guilty, have any impact on Montgomery's upcoming murder trial?
A conviction here can't be used to prove anything in the murder case, but I will say this. I've spent time in New Hampshire. It's big geographically, but it's like a small town. This is big news in New Hampshire. All of the details of this case are being seen across the media. These are the potential jurors in the murder case. And this does not look like a good place to raise a child. So whether there's a conviction or not in this case, this evidence and its media coverage is going to create a very difficult environment for this defendant in the murder case coming up this fall.
Yeah. The court of public opinion always has an effect on jury selection. That is very true. Thank you for that point, Mark. Well, when we come back, a former child in foster care is suing the state of Arizona for dismissing sexual abuse claims that spanned over a decade. Up next, we'll explore why the state says they're immune to consequences. finishing today's show in Phoenix, where a child sex abuse victim is asking a judge to decide a negligence claim in a lawsuit against the state of Arizona. We want to warn you, this story is very disturbing. 20-year-old Trevor Frodsham was in foster care his entire life. He says he was sexually abused by his foster father for 12 years, starting at 2 years old to the age of 14. Arizona allowed the foster father, David, to retain custody and even adopt other foster children despite over a dozen claims of misconduct. The state said the Department of Child Services investigated the complaints but couldn't prove them to be true. David Frodsham was a civilian commander working with the U.S. Army. He was eventually arrested in 2016 for leading a sex abuse ring. He forced multiple foster children to perform sex acts on him and his friends, sometimes in the presence of his wife, Barbara. David is currently serving a 17-year sentence in prison. Defendants in Trevor's lawsuit include the state of Arizona, his foster parents, the Department of Child Services, and other agencies. Additional claims in the suit include assault and battery and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The judge will have to decide whether to make a ruling on the negligence claim and have all of the claims go to the jury. That decision is expected to happen next week. The state of Arizona claims that they and the Department of Child Services have what's called qualified immunity and cannot be held liable for the decisions they made in this case. We had a chance to speak with an Arizona attorney that is representing some of the foster children who had to live in David's home. Here's what she had to say about the case.
There's videos of him having sex with his adoptive son. They try to make these arguments that a convicted pedophile who disseminates porn, kiddie porn, only likes one kid out of the whole house. I don't think so. But what the real defense of the state and the licensing agencies to cobble together a very confused argument on qualified immunity. They try to make the judge feel sorry for these poor workers. And the conservatives are very, very into protecting police officers. I don't know why they apply this to people who are paid to take care of children. Criminal defendants who are, quote, being treated unfairly by the police, they have a right to a lawyer, a right to a trial. They have all sorts of Sixth Amendment rights, Fifth Amendment rights. These little children have no one.
Mark, horrible, horrible case. What do you think of qualified immunity being applied here? Does the state not bear some responsibility?
Potentially, but let's remember, when we sue the state, we're suing ourselves. This lawsuit wants taxpayers to pay these children. I say the sex offenders are at fault. Sell all of their things, give that money to the victims. But in a qualified immunity setting, what it means is when people are doing their job and making close professional calls, it's wrong to hold them accountable civilly when they're using the best information they have at the time. So qualified immunity protects people like police officers and children's services workers from frivolous lawsuits or from claims that are better brought against the real villain here, which of course are the sex offenders who did these evil crimes. Yeah.
Well, Terry, talking about suits, the plaintiffs have sued under Section 1983. I know you're familiar with that. What exactly is a 1983 claim, and what do the plaintiffs need to demonstrate in order to prevail?
Well, it's more a process, the 1983 claim, but it gives an individual the right to sue a state employee as long as that state employee is acting under what they call the color of law. And it is to protect a constitutional right. And here it's life, liberty, and personal security of those children. And so I think as long as we can show here in this case, or at least the plaintiff can show in this case, that these individuals were working under color of law, under state law, and that they were negligent and that they did not protect the children, I think there's a good chance that they could prevail. And, you know, I spoke to this attorney and she's adamant about these claims. She's adamant that the state agency is pointing the finger at their subcontractors who actually investigated these individuals and allowed them to continue, you know, working in the foster system.
Yeah. Definitely a way. We got to protect the children one way or another. Mark, Terry, thank you very much for joining us as always, and thank you for joining us here at Law&Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.